These are my notes today. I worked really hard. No, sometimes having no notes is better. So we're going to be discussing climbing the ladder of integrity. We're going to explain what that means this morning. We've got one quick announcement before we head into the topic.
Thank you. Okay. This is short notice, but starting next Sunday evening, I'm going to do an 8-week program on parenting. And God, I've been kicking and screaming all the way. I want to do sermons on the Old Testament. How many know that? Anybody is invited. Some couples don't have children yet. Some people are single. I think you should still come if you want to. It's going to be 8 weeks. It's going to be, the reason it's Sunday night is because there are some folks that work evenings. So they asked if it could be like at 6:30 Sunday evenings. I'm going to try to keep it to about an hour. In fact, my lesson plans they only take like 8 to 10 minutes to read, but then we're going to talk. Now, the program my wife and I took that saved us from becoming cultural parents, because there are 2 models that are failing in our culture. That course was 4 months long, over 300 pages, homework. Okay, so I'm not going to do that to people. I siphoned it down to 2 or 3 pages, and but anyways. So Sunday nights, 6:30, it's going to be 8 weeks long. If something comes up with the church, we'll if it's a Sunday night, then we'll just, it'll go a little bit past that. We won't do it that evening or whatever, because this is so, I'm looking at you like, this is crazy. This is I just looked at my calendar this morning and realized it's next week that I got to start this. And another thing I need to say, I'm not going to arrange childcare. From what I know, if you arrange childcare at a church, you have to have certain stipulations, I think. So we will be here at church, so the nursery will be open, I'm sure. So if you have kids that you want in the nursery, you can do that. But I don't think I can coordinate that. There's some sort of legal stuff I don't know about. I think Hadessa was telling me that you have to be careful at church functions. So I'm not giving childcare, but it'll be here, so you guys can work that out. What was that?
Children will be here, hopefully cared for.
Yeah, hopefully cared for. So, is that enough, do you think, or any questions about that? How many copies should I make? If you hold up your hand, I'm not saying you have to be there. Don't feel bad. I know there's about 6 people that aren't here that I already know of. Okay. So, okay. I think I'm going to make about 20 copies. That's what yeah. So everyone's invited. Even if you're old like me, you can come. So, okay. Thank you.
So Jay might not have all the parenting answers, but if you look at his kids, you see good fruit. So I'm sure he has at least some of the answers.
Or you can disagree with me, but at least you have something to disagree with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have someone to get mad at.
Yeah.
And be embittered towards. No, it's a joke. Okay, so do we have the video? We're going to have Pete kick it off with good old Pete. And we're going to break.
Welcome to Session 6, Climb the Ladder of Integrity. Let's review for a moment where we've come so far. In Session 1, we began with the community temperature reading, our beginner foundational skill. In Session 2, we did stop mind reading and clarify expectations. Then in session 3, we did genogram your family. Our 4th session was explore the iceberg, and last week was incarnational listening. Now this session builds on the previous skills and is more challenging. Again, we call it the ladder of integrity. This is used when something is bothering you, when you've been experiencing tension with someone, or a situation in which you find yourself perhaps angry or frustrated or bothered, maybe even hurt. Other times it has to do with the fact that something important to you, that is something you value, is being violated. Let's review the purpose of the ladder of integrity that's written in your workbook. It is to clarify your values by processing your thoughts and feelings, and if necessary, to assert yourself respectfully. Let me say that one more time. The purpose of the ladder of integrity is to clarify your values by processing your thoughts and feelings, and if necessary, to assert yourself respectfully.
Here are some examples. Every time you're out to dinner with your friend, they take phone calls. It's getting to you, but you're not sure whether you have a right to say something. You have a family member that tells racist jokes. It really bothers you, but you don't know how to address it. You call your friend, but they never call you. Why does this aggravate you so much? A coworker continually talks negatively about another coworker, and you have this growing uneasiness about it. Your friend consistently takes needless risks when driving, and you have conflicting feelings about it. You're on edge every time you call home because there's something about the way your mother or father talk to you that disturbs you. You're becoming conscious that you don't like watching movies that your spouse or someone else picks that have inappropriate or unnecessary sex or violence in them. Climb the Ladder of Integrity is a personal journaling tool. It is meant to help you get honest and clear about what's going on inside of you, to discover your values and how for you they're being violated. Once you identify why something is important to you, then you can take responsibility for it. This, of course, involves slowing down for reflection. And that's what the Ladder of Integrity is all about. It's meant to help you respond thoughtfully, respectfully, and effectively based on your values, rather than merely being reactive and blaming. In other words, it enables you to live with integrity. What I mean by that is, what's important to you on the inside is congruent with what you are living on the outside. So let's go back to a few of my earlier examples. Every time you're out to dinner with your friend, they take phone calls. So instead of getting frustrated and saying nothing in an effort to be nice, or say something sarcastic like, "Oh, nice of you to join me again," you climb the ladder and you get in touch with your value of having a relationship where you respect each other by giving your full attention to one another. Or you have a family member that tells racial jokes. It really bothers you, but you don't know how to address it. So instead of avoiding them or saying something like, "What's your problem?" you climb the ladder and you get clear about your value for the dignity of all people. You call your friend, but your friend never calls you. Instead of deciding, "I'm not going to call them anymore," you climb the ladder and you get clear on how you value mutual initiative in this particular friendship. You are on edge every time you call home because there's something about the way your mother or father interact with you that you find disturbing. So instead of making excuses of why you can't visit them, you climb the ladder and realize that when your mother or father speak to you, your own sense of value and dignity feels diminished. You prefer they speak to you clearly and respectfully. So you take time to prepare to have that conversation with them. I have learned that in order to have a healthy relationship with myself and others, I need to know my values. I need to be congruent between what I value and what I'm living. Climbing the ladder of integrity helps us move towards this healthy integration. A lot of us don't realize how much depression and anxiety can stem from living out of fear of expressing ourselves. Unfortunately, most of us have not been taught how to discover or uncover our values. The reason the ladder of integrity is so important is because Scripture tells us we are each uniquely created in the image of God with distinct preferences, hopes, dreams, and values. No one else can live your life and express your values for you.
Now, climbing the ladder of integrity may sometimes involve moral issues of right and wrong. Other times it may involve gray areas or personal preferences. So for example, in Galatians 2, your Bible study, we saw Paul's integrity caused him to confront Peter about his hypocrisy by not eating with Gentiles in the church at Antioch. Or it may be a moral issue such as pornography or abusive anger or stealing. Other times when we are talking about integrity, we're talking about what Romans 14 calls gray issues. Gray issues refer to things that are not necessarily right or wrong. We may differ on the kinds of movies we watch or how far above the speed limit we go. Paul writes in Romans 14, some consider one day more sacred than another, others consider every day alike. Everyone should be fully convinced in their own mind. Now remember, the ladder of integrity is not a conflict resolution tool. Clean fighting, the next skill will be used for that. The purpose of this skill is for you to get clear and clarify what's going on inside of you so you can identify your values and then, if appropriate, respectfully respond to them rather than react or blame other people. Now notice the progression of the ladder in your workbook. Notice we begin at the bottom and go up. Numbers 1 to 6 have to do with what is going on inside of me. 1, right now the issue on my mind is. 2, I'm anxious and talking about this because. 3, my part in this is. 4, my need in this issue is. 5, my feelings about this are. And 6, what my reaction tells me about me is. Then it moves to what I value in numbers 7 to 10. Number 7 is, this issue is important to me because I value, and I violate this value when. Now you'll notice a star next to this because this is the heart of what you're trying to get at in the ladder of integrity. Number 8, I'm willing and not willing to. Number 9 is, one thing I could do to improve the situation is. 10 is, the most important thing I want you to know is. And then finally, the last 2 sentence stems deal with what I hope. Number 11 is, I think my honest sharing will benefit our relationship by. And finally, number 12 is, I hope and look forward to. For now, we're going to show you a model of someone using the ladder of integrity. Her name is Rebecca O'Connor. She's married to Max, and they have a 5-year-old daughter named Lindsay. They received an email from their daughter Lindsay's teacher. This is what the email said. Hi, Mrs. O'Connor. We want you to know that we have noticed that Lindsay has been very inconsistent with handing in her homework packet each day. Since we think this teaches a child responsibility, could you please make sure that she finishes her homework each day? Thank you very much. Signed, the teacher. First, you will see one possible wrong way of responding to this email. Then that will be followed by a right way, as Rebecca, the mom, uses the ladder of integrity to get clear on her values.
Max, did you see the email that Lindsay's teacher sent over? I can't believe this. She's only 5 years old.
No, I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I mean, what are they gonna do? Penalize her for not doing her homework every night on material she already knows?
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
This is ridiculous. She's 5 years old. I mean, don't you think we should call the principal and tell him how ridiculous it is?
Sure, honey, if that's what you want to do.
Honestly, I want to call the teacher myself and give her a piece of my mind. I mean, she's 5. Why are they putting this kind of pressure on kids her age? And who is she to judge us? To put pressure on us? To put pressure on her? This is a waste of her time and ours.
Yeah, honey, I don't know what to say.
Max, did you get the email from Lindsay's teacher this morning?
No, sorry. I've just been swamped all day. I really haven't had a chance to check over my emails.
Well, it came, and when it did, I was initially really angry and upset and frustrated, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I took a few deep breaths, and I got out the ladder of integrity that we learned a few weeks ago. And I went through the sentence stems and tried to process what I was feeling and why I was feeling it. And I knew I needed to do more work on it, so I did it again an hour later. And that was helpful, but I still needed to get more clarity for myself, so I did it again later this afternoon. So would you be willing to go through it with me as I go through the sentence stems and go up the ladder?
Of course, I would love to, honey.
Okay, thank you. So I wrote this out, and I'll just go through the ladder with you.
Okay, yeah.
So right now the issue on my mind is this email we got from Lindsay's teacher saying that she's being inconsistent in handing in her homework.
Okay.
And she asked us if we could make sure Lindsay has it done every day. And I'm anxious about this because I really don't like tensions and disagreements. And the thought of it makes my stomach turn inside out. And I'm also anxious that we might be thought of as bad parents. My part in this is I become defensive and shut down. The way I usually handle situations like this is to simply do what the other person wants and not take the time to really reflect on what I think. My need in this issue is to really get clear in myself about what is upsetting me and my values around this issue. My need is also to take time to talk with Lindsay's teacher so we can agree on next steps together.
That's good.
My feelings about this are anger and frustration and definitely defensive. And I have a deep fear that we might be viewed as bad parents. What my reaction tells me about myself is I want other people's approval more than I care to admit. And what I usually do is give in to other people's wants so that I'm not perceived in a bad light. What my reaction also tells me about me is I have a hard time finding my voice and saying what I really think and feel. This issue is important to me because I value Lindsay and her development as a 5-year-old in every aspect of her life.
Yeah.
And she knows the material already. Her teacher even told us she's ahead of most of her class. So I value giving her experiences that help round out her development in ways that she can't get from school, like with music or swim lessons.
Right.
And for me, investing in those activities is a better use of her time than her finishing her homework packets each day.
I agree, yeah.
And I violate that value when I don't get clear about what I think and feel and then communicate that respectfully to Lindsay's teacher. I am not willing to just go along with the idea that filling out the homework packets will be the most important thing for Lindsay's growth and development.
Yeah.
One thing I could do to improve the situation is engaging with Lindsay's teacher in a transparent and respectful conversation. The most important thing I want her to know is that I do respect her work as a teacher and I love how much Lindsay enjoys her class.
Yeah.
I think my most honest sharing will benefit our relationship because it will help us work together for Lindsay's sake, and we can support one another and have more talks in the future. I hope and look forward to sharing my perspective and working together for Lindsay's development, and I also want to understand more fully the reason behind her request for us.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. Really proud of you. You're a great mom.
Thank you.
Well, the ladder helped Rebecca a lot. to understand where her anger was coming from, and to get beyond it to her values. After she and Max were able to have a great talk about what to do, it was decided she would have a conversation with the teacher, which she did. While the parents' philosophy around homework may have differed from Lindsay's teacher, Rebecca and the teacher were able to share their perspectives with one another and agree on the right approach that fit Lindsay going forward. Now it's your turn. Let me invite you to turn off the video and follow the instructions in your workbook to climb the ladder of integrity yourself.
Okay, I've got more stuff to pass out. This is for your little activity. We could get some help passing these out. If Max was a really good listener, he would have repeated each line back to her. He's only a half good listener. Some of you may have noticed the ladder that I handed out was a little bit different order. You'll get to the same place, so don't worry about it. It'll be all right.
I like yours, it's easier, it's less things.
If we could put 10 minutes up on the timer, that would be great. Should be pretty self-explanatory. If you need pens, they're in the back. Put your hand up and we'll have someone get you a pen.
Again, the ladder of integrity is not about confronting another person. In fact, the ladder of integrity is not about the other person at all. It's about getting clear within yourself, about helping us grow into more differentiated people. Differentiation refers to our capacity to define our life goals apart from the pressure of those around us. This involves hard work as it requires calming down and getting clear about what is important to us. We saw Rebecca do that around Lindsay's teacher's request. That is why it is not uncommon to go up the ladder several times to make sure all hints of blaming have been removed. That is when you know you are ready to talk to the other person. But there also may be times when, after working with the ladder, getting clear within yourself is enough, and there is no need for you to go to the other person at all.
Right. I mean, a friend of ours was recently asked to assume greater responsibility as a volunteer within a large Christian organization. Rather than simply say yes out of guilt and because of the great need the organization had, something she normally did in the past, she went up the ladder prayerfully to sort out her unease and get clear about her values. You know, why am I uneasy about saying yes to this? Well, it became clear to her that if she did this, she would be violating her own value of self-care and quality time with her family. This led her to say a healthy no, which she did. It wasn't necessary for her to explain the whole backstory of her values and process, etc., with the organization. Again, there are situations like this where the goal is just to get clear within yourself. We have used Climb the Ladder of Integrity in a variety of situations. We have used it in our marriage, in our parenting, and with staff at our church. For example, one of our staff who had tension with another coworker wrote out the ladder on his own, and then he went over it with me as a neutral person. It took a couple of times up the ladder for him to get to his core value. So don't be surprised if it takes you a couple of times of going up the ladder to get to your core value. But once he got clear about his core value, he no longer felt reactive, and he was able to have a non-blaming conversation with the coworker he had been avoiding. We are asking you to practice this skill before the next session. After doing the ladder, you may decide you want to have a conversation with the person with whom you have the issue, but it's not always necessary to do that. It may be enough for you to have just gotten clear on your values.
Now, Jesus is our model of integrity. He was able to hold on to his integrity during his short earthly life. He resisted the temptations and the voices around him to wander off from the clear path the Father had laid out for him. We wouldn't be here today with you if Jerry had not gotten clear on her values and integrity. This is what enabled her to come to me many years ago and say, "Pete, I quit the church that I was leading." It was a crisis and it felt like a disaster, but God would use it to profoundly change my life. Jerry's integrity forced me to look at where I was not living my own integrity. Things like where I was saying yes when I really wanted to say no, where I cared too much for what other people thought, and where I sometimes exaggerated to make myself look better than I really was. This drove me to God, who then met me during that difficult season. Not only was I radically transformed, but so was our marriage and our church. It also resulted in the birthing of emotionally healthy discipleship, which is now being used around the world. You see, when you find your integrity, everyone around you experiences a newfound freedom as well. We've seen this again and again. You will want to do week 6 on the ladder of integrity in the Emotionally Healthy Relationships Day by Day book. I have found that silence and stillness during times with God have been significant moments when God has melted layers of pretense and superficiality in my life. And I encourage you to be open for the Holy Spirit to speak to you during those times as well. Let me close now with a favorite Hasidic tale of mine that points to our tendency to live someone else's life and not our own. It goes like this. Rabbi Susia, when he was an old man, said this: in the coming world, God will not ask, why were you not Moses? Why were you not Jeremiah? No, God will ask you, why were you not you? Why didn't you live out your own one unique, unrepeatable life? For this reason, the ladder of integrity can serve as a powerful key to unlock the door into your spiritual maturity and the beautiful, unique life God has destined for you.
All right. So, like a lot of the tools that we're presenting in this series, for some of you, this is natural. Like you process this type of stuff without using an actual tool. But even for some of us that find this a natural thing to do, there may be situations where you hit sticking points and you can't really get to the root and you're not really sure why, and this can still be a good tool. For others of us, this is a tool that we will use regularly because it helps us to determine what's going on inside us. I just want to reiterate something that they said, which is this is not always going to lead to a conversation with another person. Sometimes it will, and it'll help that conversation to go well because you've calmed down, you've understood kind of what's going on, and you've articulated how to have the conversation. But there are times when this will just lead to understanding what's going on inside of you, and that's that. Okay, so it's not necessarily leading to a conversation. During this exercise, how many of you found that you have a conversation you're going to have with someone? A couple of you. How many of you found that you thought maybe you were going to have a conversation, but you're like, oh, I guess this is just my issue? How many of you are, okay, more? Perhaps that's one of the important aspects of this tool. So climbing the ladder, I think, is really good for shining a light on what's going on inside of you, but also it gives you permission to be honest with things that are actually going on that we tend not to be honest about. I think it's a proverb that says the heart is desperately sick, or the heart is sick and desperately wicked. That's what it is. Who can know it, right? So sometimes our heart hides things from ourselves. There's stuff hidden in there that we don't even know, or we can't be honest with. So this helps us kind of shake that loose. I want to kind of connect this to something else very related to the ladder of integrity. How many of us lie to people in the name of being nice? No one here, right? Never done that. Like someone invites you to go to something, and maybe you say yes, and then, oh, something came up. Nothing came up, you just didn't want to go. Why do we fear being honest with people? Think about that for a second. It may be different reasons in different situations, but why do we struggle as a culture, as a Christian culture, with being honest with people? We're not talking about brutal honesty. Brutal honesty is just mean. But what does it look like to have integrity and loving honesty? Where we sit, maybe there's an issue, you get invited to go somewhere, and someone always invites people and no one ever wants to go. And the reason is because they do something really obnoxious or annoying, but no one ever says anything. No one ever loves them enough to address the issue and help them, right? No one knows what I'm talking about? So I think this can be a tool to help us in those situations as well. And it takes practice. You have to practice being a person of integrity, and it takes boldness to maybe say, you get invited to go somewhere you don't want to go. Can we maybe sit and talk about a deeper issue that may be going on? And maybe you have an actual conversation to address the issue of, I don't actually want to go. And I want to share with you why I don't want to go. How many of you know how discernment works many times is you feel the very thing that you're discerning, whether it's a physical issue or rejection. How many of you have met someone and immediately, for no reason, you just want to reject them? Anyone? Why do you think that is? Issue of rejection. This is connected because sometimes we don't realize what we're feeling is us, what we're feeling is someone else, and how to address those issues. But nice is not love. So what does it look like as a spiritual community, as a spiritual family, to walk in a culture of, okay, you know what? We're going to throw nice out the window. We're going to talk about what it looks like to be loving and address issues for the sake of the other person, not for our own sake. See, this ladder of integrity will help us see where our motivations are, what our values are, but there's also work to be done to not just address what's inside of us, but maybe help someone with an issue that they have. That's a perpetual issue that everyone sees. Like, everyone's like, oh, that's so-and-so, right? But no one says anything to so-and-so. They just roll their eyes and say, that's so-and-so, right? But what does it look like to be a community that helps so-and-so through that issue? Helps them walk in, like we talked about earlier this morning, sees the purpose and the plan and the gifts and the identity that Jesus put inside them. And we call that forth. That's what it looks like to be a prophetic community. Love people in spite of where they are and call them to where they're supposed to be in Christ. Make sense? All right. So, any questions or comments about this particular skill or a testimony of walking through this skill? Yeah?
I think that when we do the ladder to get, when we do the ladder to get clarity on our own, like, issues about things, I think that will help us do what you're describing, to be able to love other people well enough to be able to lovingly talk with them. It helps us, I think it will help us want to do that instead of not want to do that. And it helps us be loving with,
I agree. So this helps us sort out and bring clarity to what's us and what's that person. Maybe we find out they do have an issue, but the reason I don't want to address the issue is because I fear rejection myself. Or maybe the issue is I don't like confrontation. Well, if you do it right, maybe it's not confrontational. Again, and maybe it's an invitation to invite the Lord to heal that place in you that hinders you from addressing that issue in the other person. Or maybe you come to the conclusion that it's not my place to address this particular issue. But again, it helps sort out and clarify what's at hand. Both the issues within and the issues in the other person. That's good. Did you have a hand?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of tied in though.
I mean, I was just sitting there wondering if sometimes our Midwestern niceness or kindness isn't actually rooted in the fear of man. It's like you want to be liked by people so you don't address things that maybe you see, and I think the balance is obviously speaking the truth in love. We don't just want to, pick at people, but at the same time, it's like sometimes things need addressed, but we won't because we want them to like us, because we're actually dealing with the fear of man.
I would also say, it also has, God gave us boldness to speak truth in love, and a person who, I don't know, people aren't going to want to hear the truth in love. They want to hear what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. So, and then we're afraid of that because we're afraid that they're going to reject us.
Good. So brutal honesty might be, you've got a spirit of rejection, you need to deal with that. Maybe that's 100% right, 100% accurate, and not the best way to address that issue. Right. Right. So, you know, there are ways of addressing an issue that show care and concern and love towards that person. It all comes down to, do we love the person enough that we're willing to make ourselves feel uncomfortable for their sake? Or do we value our own feelings and own emotions and the peace in our life that we don't want to shake that up at all? So we just let the person go. And I think back to what Brian said with the Midwest culture, I think there is a high value on relationships in this kind of Mennonite-ish culture, right? There's a high value, and the perversion of that is fear of man and saving face instead of being loving. Again, it's not that the value isn't relationships, it is, but it gets perverted and twisted. So somebody, somewhere, sometime has to fight against that and create a different culture. May it be here. Any other questions or testimonies?
Can I propose, so if I'm being honest with you, I've heard you share this multiple times, and it makes me uncomfortable. And so I think there's multiple reasons on that, but it scares me a little bit fostering an environment of that honesty. But the journey that I have just seen God doing in me is the other side, the receiver. And so I guess I propose, through this journey of honesty and breaking down the fear of man, is there value to focusing on being the other side and being receptive to correction? And in that, I feel like that then creates something in us then that can be better used in bringing correction. Is that? So that's just me being honest, that you make me uncomfortable every time I've heard this, and I believe the heart of God. It's like it scares the crap out of me being part of a group of people that are just brutally honest, you know. But I've also sat and seen God come after me in the last year of, Jeremy, be quiet. Jeremy, are you willing to take correction? Jeremy, are you willing to be vulnerable? Are you willing to just drop your guards and defenses and hear what people have to say? And I guess I wonder if that is something worth fostering that can lead to the honesty that you're talking about.
I 100% agree with that, and hopefully it's not brutal honesty that we exhibit here, but you shouldn't dish anything out that you're not willing to eat yourself. Don't even go there. So that's a good point. If you're not walking in humility and teachability and correctability, and you're not willing to be corrected, don't go correcting anyone. Period. And again, it's all about the heart issue, because it's not about going around, we're not giving people badges to police other people. That's not the point. If you're in relationship with someone, or you have a positional authority over someone, then you have a place. But it's likely that if you don't have either of those, you don't have a place to speak in their life. Most likely. But going through the ladder of integrity will help you to decipher that and discern that, because maybe the Lord is telling you to say something, and you don't really have a relationship, and you don't really have authority, but maybe He's saying yes. But your heart has to be clean. That's the key. And it is scary, because people are like, oh no. But again, that's a product of our culture. Because if it's done well, like Jesus, it's freeing, it's relaxing, it's peaceful, it's life-giving, it's full of life. So again, it's not about being factual. It's not about truth seeking in that way. It's about truth seeking as in the person of truth, who is Jesus. Calling truth out of people. Calling people unto something and out of something. Not calling people out. Right? Big difference. So I appreciate your honesty in that, because you're not the only one that feels that. I feel the same thing. Anyone here like being corrected? I'm actually learning to like it, believe it or not. I mean, not in a weird sort of way where I just want to be whipped and beat on. Right. It does depend on who does it.
Whether it's with a scalpel or a meat cleaver. If they have skill and they know what they're doing for my edification, it's a beautiful
There you go. There you go. But the Lord disciplines those he loves. And the Lord, if we discipline or confront in the way that the Lord does, it produces fruit from his kingdom. Not the contrary. Greg, did you have something?
Yeah, I do.
For myself, yeah. As we're just going through this thing, thinking in my life, this 10-step thing is like finding the combination to your heart. Because some of us have that emotion or that heart is under combination lock and we don't know. Some of us know the combination, can open and close it at will. Some of us have that combination. We don't know how to open that thing up. So this process is helping us to find the combination to open up and let God in or let other people in. And so, you know, in my life, God used a sledgehammer a lot to break it down because I didn't catch it. But God needed to break things down, and so, but I just believe that somebody needs to hear that God is working on the combination to unlock whatever's going on inside, because to let people in and to let God in.
Observation I wanted to share. I didn't think about this until Jeremy said what he did, but this tool, this ladder tool, we can use. It helps us understand what's going on, even if somebody comes to us with like a problem or confrontation concerning an attitude or something we said. Then we can. This is helpful to us with that way too, as the receiver of somebody talking.
That's good. So one more thing, just to go back to Jeremy's point, we also need to be very clear that if we're going to succeed in any of this, we have to allow for failure. Part of growing something in a culture is providing a place where it's safe to make a mistake. And some of that has to do, in this context, with being unoffendable people. It takes time to get there. It takes health to be unoffendable. And maybe none of us are ever going to be totally unoffendable, like Jesus. But that's the goal. To extend grace when someone comes and blasts you with a bazooka out of the water, instead of doing it lovingly. Maybe we climb the ladder of integrity, we deal with the stuff that it rose up inside us, and we go back to the person and say, you know what, you are absolutely right in what you shared. You addressed an issue in my life. Do you mind if I help you in the future do it in a better way? Again, this goes both ways. But we have to be willing and okay with allowing mistakes. It's that way with growing in the gifts of the Spirit. It's that way with growing in anything. This stuff should be normal, but it's not normal. It's not normal culturally. It's not normal in the church. Dealing with healthy relationships, relational dynamics, or doing it in a healthy way. I wish that wasn't true, but it just is. Okay, any more questions? This is good. This is what I hope happens every week, is dialoguing about the topic, because it helps us go a little deeper and put application and legs to it.
I just have a comment, like just working with people, because I would ask the Lord to help me to see people the way that He sees them. And usually people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. So usually if I would speak life to somebody, I would let them get to know me and let them know that I love them, like genuinely love them to where they know. And then I'm like, okay, now that you know me and you know that I love you, then I'm gonna speak life into you. And whatever you see in me, you know, I will receive that as well. So it's all about having wisdom and being guided by Holy Spirit.
Amen. Any more?
I hope I'm not repeating, but I think if we go about it with the heart of correcting others, we're gonna really do a lot of damage to each other. So I know that that is how it feels, because I have had it happen to me, and it's like, what did I do wrong? And I've also done it where I have done that, and a person didn't talk to me for a year, and that relationship was really hard to rebuild. So I think just a word of caution to our heart behind when we and how we go about it. Something I've learned personally is to start with, along with what Amanda was saying, is help me understand. So when you did this, I felt this, but I don't think that's who you are, so help me understand what was going on. And maybe that goes into next week with the conflict part, I don't know, but just we have to be really, really, really careful when we do this.
Amen. And one thought I just had was, as we help shine light on areas in people's lives, it might be helpful to think of it in terms of the way that God brings conviction to us. We're not convicting them of sin, that's not what I'm talking about, but similarly to the way he convicts us, he doesn't say, look what you did, you're bad, stop doing this. He doesn't focus on that. He says, this is who you are. This is where I'm taking you. This is inside you that maybe you don't see. He's calling us unto something. If we think of it in that term or in those terms when we address these issues, I think it'll go a lot better than focusing on this negative and saying, hey, here's who you are. Try this, that type of thing. Instead of focusing on, you're a pain to be around, you're annoying, you're negative. Maybe don't address those issues. Say, you're a life-giving person. Let me help you see how maybe to express that. Big difference.
Just going along with what we've been talking about, this is like a personal experience and involves Kyle. One time I had someone that I was so sure that I needed to confront because they were definitely living out of a dysfunction in a certain area. But so I asked Kyle, I definitely went into the conversation with, help me figure out how to address this problem. By the end of the conversation, I was just like, oh, there is so much more I needed to address within myself before, like, I was responding to that person's dysfunction. And yeah, he just definitely encouraged me, like, of the dysfunction they were living out of was a dysfunction of rejection. And he was like, the best thing you can do is really just check your own heart and come to them in a spirit of acceptance. And just, yeah, call out that, and then let them know that there is acceptance and love and stuff. So.
And if it's a situation that I'm thinking of, when she did it right and she did it well, and it had good fruit, and the person responded really well. So, but it was because she was willing to examine herself first and do that scary work. So here's a challenge I have for you this week. Think of some situations recently that we mentioned before, like being invited somewhere or someone asks you to do something and you want to lie to them instead of being truthful. Think of some of those situations, or put yourself in those situations and practice what you would respond with. How you would respond in a way that has integrity and love at the same time. Where you don't compromise, you don't say yes, even though you really don't want to say yes. but you don't say no brutally. And you also don't, at the last minute, oh, something came up, when nothing came up. Is that an okay challenge? And if you find yourself struggling with, I just genuinely don't know how to respond to this situation, don't condemn yourself, get some help. Talk about it with someone, say, how would you say this? Like, how would you address this situation with so-and-so? No, don't tell them who it is. So that's my challenge. And then hopefully someone has a testimony to share next week about having a loving, not brutally honest conversation, but a loving, and not necessarily with addressing an issue, but with responding to a request or responding to someone, an interaction with someone where we would normally, there's no such thing as a white lie. They're all dark from the pit of hell. There's no good lie. Okay.